You planned to work out today, but the baby woke you up 4 times last night. No, wait, that was me. Well, you didn't get great sleep for some reason. You feel like crap. And should you work out? Is the workout going to make you sick as you push your body and immune system over the edge? Or should you just go for it and quit being so whiny? You're not alone in wondering this. The good news is that technology can help now. There's an app for that. There are a few devices out there, so we want to tell you about them. In this podcast, Mike's going to cover the Whoop, WHOOP. We've both been testing this device for a while. And then very soon, we're going to talk about the Oura Ring as well. We've gotten a lot of questions about it, and we've been testing it for quite some time. We think there's real value in these. Now, which is right for you? Well, listen in. Hopefully, these podcasts are going to help you decide. And just to be clear, we have no affiliation with these companies and receive nothing from them.
Hey there, I'm Mike.
And I'm Matt.
And I'm Jody. The Wild Health Podcast is our quest into human performance, longevity, and personalized medicine. Together, along with experts in these fields, we'll learn how to live longer, better, and become smarter and stronger. We'll do the deep dive into the research and hard work of putting it all together, and you reap the benefits.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wild Health Podcast. My guest today is Jake Santora from Whoop. Whoop is a wearable fitness tracker. It's a pretty cool device that we're going to be basically talking about all on this podcast. Jake's a former athlete. He's played many different sports, but most prominently was a football player and the captain of the championship team at Ithaca College. He's got a degree in sports management and is a certified personal trainer and specializes in physiology and psychology of sports. Prior to Whoop, Jake worked with places like EvoShield, Skills, Equinox, and worked with some of the most elite athletes and high-level executives in the world. Since joining Whoop, Jake's still working with those elite athletes and high-level execs, but he's doing it more specifically to optimize performance with data, lots and lots of data. All right, Jake, welcome to the Wild Health Podcast. Maybe a good place for us to start would be to just kind of talk about what exactly the Whoop is, because I seem to get asked on a pretty regular basis, what is that thing on your wrist? And it kind of takes a little while to explain it to him. So maybe you could just kind of go over that for us. What is the Whoop and what exactly does it do?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Happy to be here. Love what you and Matt are doing there, and it's been great here at Whoop. I've been here for just over a year, and I'm the elite team manager. So I get to work with our professional athletes, our collegiate, our high school athletes, and even our Olympic athletes. So where Whoop really comes valuable to them is, as you said, we are a wrist wearable. So we're wearable technology. I think constantly worn. It is the 24/7 monitor, and it's really comfortable fit. Just sits nice and tight right on your wrist. We have an innovative battery pack for charging as well, which really I think separates us from other things out there, as you never have to take off your Whoop strap. So it stays on your wrist. You actually can you use the battery pack and you slide it on your Whoop strap to charge. So I think just a cool feature that I always like to mention with just the innovation of the hardware and the strap itself. But really where we stand out is, of course, the metrics that we're obtaining. So all of this data is what we're taking from the individuals would be our strain score, recovery score, and sleep. The strain score with Whoop, we measure from 0 to 21 using Borg scale of perceived exertion. This is going to be the stress that you're putting on the body through an entire day. It's based upon your heart rate, your max heart rate, and the time that you spend in your heart rate zone. Now, the great thing with capturing a day strain of an individual or an athlete is we can see the stresses from our everyday life. We're seeing family stress, relationship stress, travel stress, career, work stress. All those are going to be captured to give you an understanding of what the stress is being put on your body consistently. Then when you look at the recovery score that you capture, is it's based upon heart rate variability, and sleep. Those three metrics we've learned from a lot of studies that we did, all three together really gives you an accurate recovery score to understand how primed the body is for the day to take on those stressors. We measure it from 0 to 100, giving a nice simple percentile for our individuals to see. We even throw in a stoplight of color coding of essentially red, yellow, and green to, again, help and assist with understanding of how primed you are that day. Obviously, green being ready to take on a substantial amount of stress, Yellow, able to take on stress, but not as much as a primed to perform as green. Red could mean that you're a little bit under recovered, but we'll also kind of get into sometimes when we see red, it's not always the end of the world. But again, just showing you a real time of how primed you are for that day. Then we'll jump to sleep. We give individuals visibility in their sleep need, which would be based upon their personal baseline, which is we'll capture as you consistently wear Whoop, how much sleep they need. The recent strain that you're putting on the body will be added to that sleep need, along with sleep debt. This does accumulate sometimes for individuals that struggle with sleep, and that will be added to your sleep need. But then we're going to give you the sleep performance score, again, in a percentage from 0 to 100, because we'll take into account the actual hours of sleep that the individual got. Now, with Whoop, we really don't just focus on duration, right? We've always heard in the past, you need 8 hours, you need 8 hours. But really with us is we're focusing on the quality of sleep that individuals get. So you have the ability to jump in and see all your sleep cycles. So you can capture how much time you spend in REM sleep, slow wave sleep, light sleep. We also have an awake stage in there. So these are things like disturbances where our body wakes up in the middle of the night without even us knowing, but that cuts down your quality of sleep. And then lenticity, how long is it taking me to fall asleep? So that really goes in to give you an accurate recording of how long you've been asleep, but also the quality overall with those stages. Really simple platforms for all of our users that they seem to love, and certainly can be eye-opening when you have the ability to unlock the secrets in our body.
Yeah, I think most of the listeners now are thinking to themselves, man, this thing sounds intense. Like that's a lot of data you just described. And in some ways it is. I mean, I sort of describe it to people when they're asking me what it is, that it's sort of like an Apple Watch on steroids. I mean, it kind of looks like a watch. It's a band basically, right? But it doesn't have a screen on it, which is kind of nice because you don't have a screen interfering with your life. But it really is collecting data all the time. I mean, constantly throughout the day. And, one thing that's interesting to me, I guess I've been wearing a Whoop for about 6 months now. And the thing that's really changed for me is the conversations that I've started to have with myself about the data that I'm getting back. So I'll often find myself getting a bad night of sleep, at least according to my Whoop data. And sort of now I actually talk to myself about it. And I kind of think like, what was it yesterday that interfered with my ability to sleep? Was it being on my phone before I went to bed? Was it, eating dinner too late before I went to sleep? Was it the activity or the exercise that I did yesterday? And these are conversations that I don't think really have with myself prior to wearing a device like this that's given me this constant feedback. And I think it's allowed me personally, at least, to sort of modify my daily activity to try to optimize my performance in a pretty meaningful way. Are you seeing that amongst a lot of your users?
Absolutely. We actually, so on the Whoop website, if anyone wants to check out, we have a section called The Locker, and we have some validation, some incredible stories from our teams or individuals using Whoop. But one of them was our behavioral change impact. Now that you have the ability, as you've hit on the head, we've always had the psychological aspects, maybe at times when we wake up a little foggy or, not really feeling too like ourselves. And maybe that did mean that we were under recovered. But now you have a tool that is so impactful for you to see firsthand the actual understanding of your body on a consistent basis. And you hit it on the head. The behavioral changes that we see automatically are really, really impactful. We've actually seen an increase in individuals dedicate more time to sleep. We've seen a reduction in individuals with consuming alcohol, when you can really see firsthand how alcohol consumption affects HRV, resting heart rate, or just our bodies even overall. You see that next day, it's going to change some decisions that you do make. Even when you're doing those things right, the focus on sleep specifically is really, what are the things that we can do to ensure that we get great quality of sleep? And I tell my athletes all the time is that it's treating it like a competition or a game. You have a pre-bed routine, you have a bedtime, you have a wake-up time. You're setting yourself up with pajamas before you go to bed as your sleeping uniform, essentially, because the body can begin to recognize that piece of clothing, which will help you fall asleep faster, along with allow you to get into those sleep cycles much easier while you sleep. There's a lot of different things that you can do to adjust, but that's part of it. Is now I see it. Is there an issue? Tell myself the story. What could it have been, from nutrition to hydration, from training load perspective, but really telling yourself the story and saying, okay, well, you know what? Next time that comes around, I am going to make a decision to maybe not throw on another Netflix show for one more episode, but I'm actually going to go to sleep and start to wind things down. Or, I'm going to make a better decision at dinner with, things along those lines from a nutritional value. So absolutely, you've hit it on the head of just the incredible behavioral changes you'll make on your own by just having the power now to see these things firsthand.
Yeah, it's so interesting. One of the things that I want to focus in on, you mentioned it there for a minute, is this concept of heart rate variability. So that's something that I've been trying to track for a couple of years now. I remember when I first started doing this, it was before I had an Apple Watch or any other wearable, and I was actually putting my finger over the camera of my phone whenever I'd wake up, and it would using the light, it would basically like measure your pulse and give you your heart rate variability through the camera of your phone, and that was pretty variable. I got to say, I'm and not in a good way. I mean, it was. I'm not sure. I'm not confident that was very good data. And then I started doing it with the Apple Watch, but the problem with that was it was measuring it all throughout the day, and I'd have to go in and edit the data and delete the heart rate variability measurements that were occurring, midday while I'm exercising or any other time other than when I'm sleeping, ideally. And then I still don't even know while I'm sleeping if it's the right time that I'm sleeping. So it's been nice now that I've got a wearable that's very focused in on this specific data point. And giving me pretty consistent data to the point that I can create a baseline and really know what my baseline is and see variation in it. So let's dive into that for a minute. What is exactly, if you don't mind going into the physiology a little bit, some for us, Jake, what is heart rate variability and how is Whoop actually measuring it?
So HRV, it really is a key metric, again, to understanding how primed our body is for the given day. But it's also something that's really new, and really only because in the last couple of years where there's awareness to how key of a metric this is to utilize. But I do believe someday that we'll get to a point where you could just look at HRV of individuals and potentially develop a training program around it, because it is so personalized to us as individuals. Of everyone's HRV is going to be unique to themselves. There's so much that goes into that one recording of HRV. It's genetics, age, nutrition, fitness level, and that's from a young age to as we get older. It's going to be adjusting, but it really does play into being so personalized. And essentially what it is from the basic sense of it is a function of your heart, but it's also it's how your nervous system is communicating to your heart and through your entire body. So you have your parasympathetic branch in your nervous system that's going to be more rest and digest. And then you're going to have your sympathetic branch in your nervous system that's going to be fight or flight. So that's going to be all the stresses, all the training load and perspective. And it's how these two branches of your nervous system, how well are they communicating to your entire body? What's the variables and rhythm of those two branches communicating together, which really, really breaks down to essentially being, am I putting on the right stress on my body from a training perspective? And then am I taking the time to recover? Is that sleeping or is that recovery modalities? So really focusing on those aspects of making sure the body's talking to itself properly is kind of the best way to put it, and ensuring that there are aligned from the stress to recovery that we're taking the time to do. And when it comes to that HRV, it is, again, so unique. So we never say to compare always. For example, Michael Phelps does have an HRV in the 200 plus, which is incredible for, but that's an Olympic multi-medal winner. But with other individuals, it might be a little bit lower, maybe 50s or 80s. But again, it's so personalized that it's more it's more beneficial to focus on where you're deviating from your personal baseline, whether that's an upward trend or a downward trend, and make sure that you're focusing on that as opposed to maybe comparing to others or, attempting to have a highest HRV, because again, it's going to be more personalized to where you're deviating from on a consistent basis. And then Mike, the last thing that I would also say from why we are actually very unique when it comes to HRV, there is a lot of technology. I know you mentioned a couple that can track HRV, but what we essentially do is when you're calculating heart rate variability, a lot of things can come into play to give you misrecording. It can be, there's a lot of technology, or even manually you can track HRV or calculate it in an individual. They like to do it first thing in the morning, but you can wake up to an alarm clock. You can go to the bathroom. You may have a cup of coffee, and before you do that recording, those type of things could throw off an HRV accurate measurement. So So what we're allowed to do is we actually take the HRV in the last 5 minutes of slow wave sleep. This is proven from our studies that you lose stimulation with the environment during slow wave sleep. So that completely takes out the environment, can't play a factor. Because you're unconscious and you're in your deepest sleep at this point, there's rare to little movement occurring. But of course, the individual themselves can't alter their respiratory system unconsciously or unconsciously because they're asleep. So those type of things, and obviously lighting as well can actually factor in when, there's some things that take it during the day, but even lighting can factor in. And of course, if you're asleep, it's nighttime, it's a darker room. But also, since we can take such a substantial amount of time of a 5-minute recording, we're going to get a really accurate HRV for that day because of all those things. But then when I'm looking at trends, which is going to be so impactful when you're analyzing the data, we really give you an accurate trend score as well. So that's really what separates us when we're looking at HRV and how we're calculating it.
Yeah, I don't know if we specifically said it, but basically a higher HRV is considered better or more recovered, right? The idea is that your parasympathetic nervous system is more active and that increases your HRV, whereas a lower HRV is typically worse or bad in that you're under-recovered or you're overstressed. But for whatever reason, your sympathetic nervous system is more active than your parasympathetic. And maybe that's sort of a dumbed-down version, but that was one of the initial stumbling blocks I had, sort of understanding heart rate variability. At first, to me, it just seemed weird that I would want my heart rate to be more variable. but in general, that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for a higher variability. And if you're somebody like Michael Phelps, then maybe that's 200 plus, which is freaking amazing because mine's like 60. One thing I did notice though, is that mine was higher when I was doing more cardio. So when I was biking more, I think my heart rate variability was, closer in that like 80 range. And then, because it's winter, I'm not biking as much. I'm, lifting weights mostly, and I'm not doing as much cardio. Is that typical to see that kind of variation just with activity in your baseline?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a track and swimming athlete with type of things like that of, such a sport focused on the cardiovascular system, you're going to consistently challenge your heart, which is going to help with the variability. So, we do see higher HRVs in those type of athletes, maybe as opposed to, a basketball player or a football player that, yes, there's consistent conditioning and there is a load on the cardiovascular system, but it's more peaks and valleys at times as opposed to the consistency that running impacts our body with. So, I always say, especially to, just maybe shocking the system, quote unquote, or adjusting our training routine and the adaptation of it all. If you're someone that does go to the gym a lot and just kind of hit the weights and throw weights around and doesn't focus too much on running or cardiovascular type of workouts like running, that simple adjustment in your training routine of focusing more on biking like you've done and running like you said you did would be very impactful to see that type of improvement quickly, just by adjusting that type of body and really challenging your heart in that regard.
And obviously the goal here is not necessarily to have the highest HRV. I mean, HRV is a surrogate for recovery, but in a lot of ways, you guys are poised to give really strong advice on how to improve HRV and thus recovery. So Jake, if somebody came to you and they said, I want to optimize my HRV, and you took that to mean they want to optimize their recovery, and you had to pick one or two things that were the most important for them to do, what would you, I mean, I'm sure it's personalized, right? I mean, everybody's different, but taking, the population as a whole, what are the two things that people are missing the boat on the most?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, absolutely. Again, we definitely look at it with Whoop or when we're with our athletes is we don't always just pinpoint HRV, how valuable that goes into the recovery score and understanding how primed our body is where we really look at the recovery overall. But I think, again, that would correlate to HRV of just doing the right things to ensure my body's going to recover properly. I think the cardiovascular focus, like you kind of just mentioned, of challenging yourself if you're not someone that runs too much, challenge your training routine to have some focus on the cardiovascular system. And then, but I think overall the most value is ensuring that, your parasympathetic and your sympathetic branches are aligned from your training routine, which can break down to ensuring that your strain to recovery ratio is aligned as well. Is my body primed every day? But if it's not primed or wherever my recovery score is at, am I correlating my strain to that as well? Am I putting on the right amount of stress for that day based on how much stress I can take on from that recovery score? So I think the to align there is even just focusing on your overall wellness. That's beyond hydration, nutrition, but I always pinpoint sleep. I think that it's the first thing that we can control it. There's things like I discussed that we can do to set yourself up for success when you're sleeping, and you can have the great quality. And when you have the ability to allow your body to regenerate itself and repair itself in slow wave sleep, for muscle building, immune system building, or REM sleep for memory cognition, your body's going to improve itself, and that's going to impact recovery, which will have a direct effect on HRV as well. And then I would also say focusing on the training routine even more when you're looking through your Monday through Sunday. Where's an active recovery day? Where is that coming in? I don't just mean a day off for a recovery day where your body sits around and you do nothing. I mean, are you doing some chirotherapy? Do you have the ability to get a massage? Do you have the ability, whether advanced or not advanced, just to do some barrel rolling or massage work to help your body regenerate? But again, focusing on both, not so much of the stress on one end and just recovering, but focus on both equally and ensuring that you're essentially optimizing performance through that correlation.
So I'm a bit of a self-admitted overreacher, and I tend to work out as much as I possibly can because it's for the mental stuff. And one thing that's always been tough for me, and I know a lot of people I know, is this concept of looking at the data when you get up in the morning and recognizing, I'm overreached, I need a day off, and actually taking that day off. Do you actually recommend to your athletes based on just data alone, not necessarily how they feel, because a lot of times we feel like we need to work out, but do you ever recommend that they just actually take the day off completely?
Yeah. So yes, I think days off are very important, but it's when is that day off coming properly, and it may be, you're hitting on the head. Is it psychological or physiological that I'm going to go off? We always really want to go off the physiological data. Psychologically, you honestly may wake up with a very well recovered score. You slept great, but psychologically, you just don't feel something there, and you don't really understand why. But again, it's always going to be more powerful when we're the physiology of our bodies over the psychology. So when we're working with teams, we've actually been able to pinpoint in a variety of situations of saying, if I'm looking at this week load, when's the best day for an off day? And when you're looking at a full off day, you want to pinpoint it properly, because when competition day comes, we're really using the data to our advantage of saying, where should we go with heavy intensity of training? What's heavy volume training look like on a given day? What even time of the day am I practicing or training? If it's early in the morning, but my team's not a great sleeper, okay, well, I need to maybe adjust even my time so these guys can dedicate some more, or these guys and girls can dedicate more time to sleep. So when you're looking, again, it's really got a, yes, absolutely, you need the off days, but you want to pinpoint the right off day off that data. And just because maybe you woke up and yeah, you felt great, but we said, hey, you need an off day, it has a plan around it. It's not just in that given day what you can do, but we have a plan strategically set for tomorrow, the next day, and we're building it up properly to ensure from the data that, hey, come game day, you're going to have a competitive advantage on the court, in the pool, on the field, whatever it may be, because we've made all the right steps based on the data during the week as well. And then when you really think long term, you want to play conference championships, you want to go win a national championship at the back end of the season, we need to stick to this plan from the things that we're seeing, because there's a greater plan ahead. And the long-term approach that we're taking from the value of the data, from the value of studies, is going to be so impactful in the long run.
So from a workout training perspective, a lot of people tend to sort of plan their week out, at the beginning of the week and say, I'm going to do this on this day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever it is. And how do they then take the data that they get from the Whoop and adjust that schedule? Or they should adjust that schedule, basically depending on how they respond to each consecutive day.
Yeah, it's absolutely how they respond to each day. I mean, I think what I always suggest for just an individual, maybe like myself, and that now my football playing days are over, so my training load is a little bit less, and I'm happily retired about that. But when it comes to those type of things, I think for any of us, it's figuring out the right routine for us, to make sure that we are getting there. We're doing the right things. But I would say start off, if you're a first time Whoop user, or start off with what you've always done. Set your plan up. Again, it's going to be very personalized because we all don't sleep the same. Our bodies don't recover the same. Our bodies take on stress differently. And it really just comes down to seeing it firsthand of what you've been doing, take that into account, looking at the data. What days are you really under recovered? Is there, for some reason, of a 3-week, 4-week sample size of trends, is it every Wednesday that I'm under recovered? And is that not relating to sleep? Is that relating to my training routine on Monday and Tuesday? Does that mean, Thursday I'm still under recovered, and when I want to work out again on Thursday, I'm going to struggle because my body's not primed to perform that day? So it really is pinpointing, again, personally what you're focusing on and really how the body's adjusting through that training routine before you made any adjustments. But it could be even on those days, maybe it is less volume on, like, let's say if I'm working off this example on that Tuesday, maybe there's less of a volume of training. So you have high intensity, a quick 30-minute workout, as opposed to, a 90-minute high intensity, high volume training. So really, if you're focusing on it, pinpoint the right days, learn from the data, but also look at, days that you do work out. Maybe it's not an off day there or recovery day. Maybe it's more, okay, I'm going to go, but I'm going to have volume and intensity is going to be a little bit different today.
You said something there, Jake, that I thought was really interesting when you specifically said that everybody's different, everybody recovers differently, everybody responds to stress or strain differently. And, I think Matt and I know that's so true based on, all the genetic precision medicine that we're currently doing and looking into. I mean, I know that for a fact, there's something around 80 known genetic polymorphisms that affect the way that you respond to training or the way that your body recovers or your risk factors for certain athletic and performance, pathology. And it's just so interesting to me that the data from the Whoop sort of acts like the data that we would get from like a complete laboratory panel on a patient. We already know what their predispositions are. Now they've affected some change, whether that's medication or some intervention. And then the Whoop is kind of what we get on the back end. It's like how has your body responded to the interventions that you've taken on? So it's, in a lot of ways, it's a very medical device. And I am recommending this to, my patients, to my friends and family, because I think it's extremely meaningful, the data that we're collecting. And granted, we don't know what to do with all of it yet, but just on a personal level, I've really figured out, quite a bit about myself using the Whoop, and using these wearables and getting this sort of data. Have you, can you give us some, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you had one word that I love. It's my favorite. It's intervention, right? I think calculating data, that's great to get insights, great to make behavioral changes, but working with someone like yourself and Matt is what we do love to do for just brilliant minds that understand as well as you've said, but it's also understanding that impact of interventions. One of the big interventions that we do with our athletes is it's daily meditation. I know it sounds interesting, but even on yourself, if you're you're going to become a Whoop user, if you're a Whoop user out there, it's fun to play around and say, okay, if I meditate consistently, what does that look like in HIV? What does that look like in sleep? If you're making adjustments, look at that data. I think that's what our CEO really set out to do. It was an incredible squash player at Harvard, brilliant mind. And he left there, and it was about 5 years ago, said, I have an idea where I want to give the ability to individuals to unlock the secrets in our body. And what they can use with that data by unlocking these secrets is, empower them to optimize performance every day. I think that's the goal for if you're an executive, if you are a premier athlete, if you're just an individual that has an incredible career that you want to give back to people, anyone can benefit from it. And I think that's what we've really empowered individuals to do, to see this firsthand with such an advancement of our technology and such a simplified platform to really focus on it. But have fun with interventions, as you said, and use that data to your advantage. If it is daily meditation, if it is different recovery modalities, there's a lot of excitement that you can utilize. And we've been very honored and blessed to work with some of the institutes from research across the world that are doing these incredible studies with us in multiple areas, and even from the military to collegiate to there's diseases in this world that we're trying to assist with, and I think that's where we're very honored and blessed. But it's exciting to see this data firsthand for yourself, but use it to your advantage and tell yourself the story around why your body might be reacting the way it is.
That's great. I couldn't agree more. I think with that, Jake, unless there's something else you'd like to say to our audience, I think that's a perfect place to end. I think the concept of sort of those N=1 experiments where you just play around with yourself and collect that data and start to learn a little bit more about yourself is exactly why I personally love these wearables, and I think the Whoop device is super cool.
No, absolutely. I think I would leave it as lean on people like you. Lean on people like you that we're proud to have as advocates for sure, but you and Matt have done an incredible job, even yourselves, of what you've developed, and you have the mindset for it where people should come to you with questions and understanding, because it really is so impactful, the things that you guys are doing. But now with the tool that those that take advantage of with is going to be really, really impactful, I think. So no, I'm really glad to be on here, and I love what you guys are doing, and I'm glad to be working with you all, to be honest. And I think really bright road ahead, and someday I do believe in this world, it's you're just going to be walking around airports and walking around Walmart or wherever you go, and there's just going to be Whoop on everybody's wrist. I really think we're that powerful, and we'll get there someday. So
awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast, Jake. I really appreciate it. I think it's been great.
Absolutely.
We hope you like listening to the podcast as much as we like making it. If you think it's valuable, share it with somebody. Send to someone you think would really benefit, and leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. Those reviews really, really help us out. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at WildHealthMD. If you didn't like, well, why are you still listening? Email us and let us know what we can do better. But the best way you can thank us for our time is to leave a review and share. Until next time.